I think we're all in prisons in many ways. I say this as being an African-American man living in the United States. You can take away, celebrity, you could take away money, you could take away all the stuff, and the way someone would perceive you, they may not know anything about you. We're in our own prisons.
Colman Domingo is an American actor, playwright, and director whose multiple accolades include Tony Award and Academy Award nominations for his work on stage and screen. I'm David Woode, the crime correspondent for The Times, and I'm often found at crime scenes and on court press benches around the country, reporting on cases ranging from robbery and fraud to rape and murder. Every day I speak to policing leaders and victims of crime, as well as the families of those on both sides of the dock. I'm particularly interested in how people end up in the criminal justice system and the rehabilitation of offenders. So I was keen to discuss these themes with Colman Domingo, whose latest film, Sing Sing, is based on the real-life Rehabilitation Through the Arts programme at the US maximum security prison of the same name. The reoffending rate for participants is 3% compared to 60% across the US. The movie follows a group of incarcerated men as they put together a play and stars several alumni of the extraordinarily successful programme.
Hold that feeling.
So here's a question. 95% of the cast of your film have had experience in the criminal justice system and been previously incarcerated. As an actor, you would have done a lot of work preparing for a role in a different production, for example, maybe speaking to people who've had life experiences and visiting programs. How different was it meeting your cast who could tell you how they felt?
David, the wildest thing is, I'll tell you this. For the first time, someone who loves to research and develop everything about a character or the history of a character, someone who wants to interrogate like a journalist and find out everything. There was something telling me that I should do things differently with this production. So even when I met John Divine G. Whitfield, who I portray, I didn't sort of interrogate him or ask him about his experiences or relate anything to the script, like how did you feel when you got out or what did you do on the inside? None of that. I sat across from him and had a dinner with him and just sort of downloaded information as you would anyone else you would get to know, which I thought was healthy, because I also wanted to establish a real bond with this person and not just I need something from you so I can portray you in some way. I didn't even do a deep dive of the prison industrial complex. I didn't know if that was necessary.
Why?
It didn't make sense to me. Like, do I need to know exactly what happens in prison when a person goes in and when they come out? For me, it was about like understanding. Maybe that's it, because I feel like if I did all that, it's as if someone has an experience outside of my own. I think we're all in prisons in many ways, whether there's walls up or not, but we're all in our own prisons in some way. We're always trying to make breakthroughs. I say this as being an African-American man living in the United States. Every single day, I'm perceived many different ways. You can take away, celebrity, you could take away money, you could take away all the stuff, and the way someone would perceive you, they may not know anything about you. We're in our own prisons. So I can relate that. I can relate to that in many ways. So for me, I wanted to make it as personal as possible and not let it be sort of an anthropological study on them, but to say, I could be in that situation, very, very much so. I come from the inner city. I know a lot of people who went to prison, who've gone through these systems. What makes us so different, what makes us I don't know, but I do know that there's certain tools and certain things you were given or not given. Whether you were told you were loved, you were special, you had a place in this world, you had a voice, you had access and opportunity. You had good food, you had, you know what I mean, all these things. You had a place, you had parks, you had nature. There's all these things that go into it, and I think that's the beautiful thing about this Rehabilitation Through the Arts program that they, I think, realized. It's there's a lot of tools they weren't given. And now, what if we pour into them and give them tools to actually be full, whole, functioning citizens of the world? And that's the kind of society that I want to live in.
Some of the things the brother was saying in the book really resonated with me, man. I mean, when we are born, we cry because we're born to a stage of fools. And I said, yo, whoever wrote this, man, had to did a bed before, Yeah.
So King Lear just fell off of a library cart and you just happened to pick it up and read a few pages.
Yeah, shit funny, right?
We'll be in touch.
All right. Stay up. Okay. He knows verse.
Yeah.
While on the subject, if you don't mind me asking, I'd read that as a child growing up in West Philadelphia, you were a shy child. And when you discovered the arts, you, quote, clung to it.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of find out a little bit more about that. What was it about theatre? What was it about the arts that was that salvation for you?
So that salvation for me came about sophomore year in college, because I was pretty shy. I was always like, when I wanted to be a journalist, I was always an observer. I was on the school newspaper. If anybody goes through my yearbook, people always think, oh, you had to be a cool kid. I'm like, no, I had glasses on, a thick sweater, and I hunched over, trying to be invisible, trying to just get through the high school experience. I go to college, and my mother, you know, she knew I was kind of witty. I was creative at home with my Legos and things like that. And she was like, take a class that'll just bring you out of yourself, you know, because she knew I wanted friends. I wanted to be different. I didn't know how to, because I wasn't a cool kid at all. But I took an acting class as an elective. And in that class, I think I didn't realize, because I've been such an observer for years, that I was able to know how to play and access and have a deep sense of empathy for other people. So that led me on this path of being a theater artist, and now a film and television artist as well. But that was the path for me, and for me it was liberating once I knew I could become and shapeshift, you know, and become someone else, and also put myself in someone else's shoes. I feel like I've had the blessing, and I think a lot of these men who went through this program recognize this for themselves. I had the blessing of actually doing some real work to evolve, you know, to really be in touch with my feelings, and really be able to articulate how I feel, or what I see, or my own story and other people's stories. I think that's the joy of being an artist like that.
So then, do you think, when you talked earlier about those prisons that we all find ourselves in, when people make a preconceived judgment based on how you present or how they view you, do you think that we could all maybe learn something from that by breaking down those walls and breaking down those shackles, so to speak?
I think so, and the one way for me that it was very active to do was to put tenderness all around this film and the making of it, because I think that's something that my co-stars didn't say this explicitly, that's what they were giving room for, was the opportunity of tenderness between men. That has nothing to do with sexuality whatsoever. But in order for them to hold each other accountable for each other's feelings and say, brother, it's okay, you can cry. You can be open. You can share your fears. You don't have to play into these things that society thinks that you are, or these ideas that people built up that had nothing to do with you. You know, you can be all that you are. That's what they did in this program. I feel like they formed this brotherhood, so much so that the word beloved is used in our film.
I murdered that Hamlet, bro. Shakespeare is in his grave right now. He rolled over.
You did your thing, beloved.
I think that's such a devastatingly gorgeous word. And when it was presented to me by my co-star, when I was being colloquial, I was like using the M word. He said, oh no, we don't use that word in there. We use the word beloved. And my brain exploded. And I thought, wow, that is an act of revolution. For people to witness and see two black or brown men saying, hello, beloved.
I found there was a lot of realism that they brought to the screen. It's obviously unique that they've had these experiences and they're in a feature film, essentially reflecting those to the wider public. What did you take from that?
There's a line that I've quoted many times that my co-star Paul Racy says in the film. He says, who could believe that the healing of the world could begin behind these walls of Sing Sing? The healing of the world. I think that's a great line. It's my favorite line. I want to underline it, because I'm like, if they're willing to do the work, imagine what we can do on the outside. It's possible for us as well.
I spend a lot of time covering the courts, and you meet people who have had both experiences on the criminal justice system. You'll meet victims' families, and you'll also meet people who've been accused of crimes and their families. And it's something that I think about, whether is crime and punishment too binary? When you look at, the RTA and the work it does to help and rehabilitate people who have been incarcerated, you ask yourself, well, why is this not replicated around the world? Do we as a society have such a binary thinking about how we meter crime and punishment?
I think we do. I think that's been instilled in all of our systems. But I think that does that system work actually? I mean, as we know, the prisons are like, bursting at its seams. And there's a lot of money being made off of prisons and sort of like creating a direct line to the prison industrial complex. And you just have to, for me, it's about raising questions. What society do we want to live in? What do we think is possible? What is forgiveness? What is accountability in doing the work? Yes. Do I believe that anyone should be judged by their worst mistake or their worst choice? Actually, I have a bit more, I think, the possibility of forgiveness. I'll say that. I can imagine, I feel like, yes, there are many people who are in prison who should not be in prison at all. There are people who have done heinous crimes as well. But is that it? Are they over? Is that it for them? Or is there possibility when they also take accountability and they say, I need help and I want to do the work to become a different person? Because a lot of times people will come out of prison and they go back in because they're like, they don't have the tools to live in the world, or like purpose or access or agency. And I think for me, I want to make sure that there's a pathway for people who want to do the work and they want to be citizens and contribute. And I'll quote my co-star, Clarence Macklin Jr., who said he used to rob people. And he's like, it's my opportunity to go back into the communities, and he has done this, and I've watched him do this, to heal the communities that I've harmed. So he can now have an effect on young people. He meets with young people all the time and really presents them with other choices, something that they didn't know. They didn't know they had choices. You don't have to do that. And also, why do people rob sometimes? I don't know if they do it just to do it. But I think sometimes they think that, I don't know what they have or don't have, or what they need or don't need, but I feel like it's about getting to the core of a lot more of that problem than just the act.
In the UK, we've had a prisoner release program because we were almost at full capacity at our prisons. I know there's been similar instances in parts of the US as well. When we try and address the causes of crime, you've got charities and policy experts who will say, well, if you've had £1 billion worth of cuts to youth services over the last decade, intervention programs that have been, cut.
Education, access to art. Housing, good food. There's so many causes that lead to that, so it's a bigger problem.
Do you think there's a desire for policymakers and those who are in positions of power to address that?
What I do know is that I had a prosecutor come and see Sing Sing and said it made her think differently, whatever that means. She said, I prosecute for a living. And she said, this made me think differently about what we're doing and where it starts and where the work really needs to begin. So for me, films like Sing Sing will crack an opening up, and maybe we'll think a little differently about what we're doing, policymakers and all, I hope.